All right, everybody, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about, well, can AI beat a kid's game?
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and the game we're going to be looking at is Pajama Sam, No Need to Hide When It's Dark Outside.
Oh, wow, a classic.
And the source that we're using to look into this question is a YouTube video by the YouTuber Doug, where he actually tries to get an AI to play through this game.
So it's kind of like we're watching an experiment unfold.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is super fascinating because we get to watch how the AI makes its decisions and how well it follows instructions.
Yeah, because I imagine it's probably not going to be exactly like a human player.
No, not at all. So I think this is going to be a very interesting deep dive. So before we jump into it, I think we should probably very briefly describe what the premise of Pajama Sam is.
Yeah, definitely.
So the goal of Pajama Sam is you're playing as Pajama Sam, and you have to go on a quest to find all your superhero gear because you're going to go capture darkness in your closet.
Which sounds pretty easy.
Yeah, you would think, but it's actually a little bit more complicated than that because there's all these little puzzles and things you have to figure out along the way.
So I imagine some of these puzzles might be a bit challenging for an AI.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of what makes this experiment so fun to watch. So in this video, we've got Doug, who's the human player, or I guess not really the player. He's more like the guide.
Yeah, he's like the AI's interface with the game world.
Yeah, exactly. And he's describing to the AI, which he names Sam, what is happening in the game.
Oh, so he's like Sam's eyes and ears.
Exactly. And then Sam is giving him commands through text, and then Doug is actually controlling the character in the game based on those commands.
So it's a really interesting way to see how the AI is interpreting the information and how it's trying to problem solve.
Yeah, and you'd think that a kid's game would be a piece of cake for AI, right?
I didn't think so.
Especially like modern AI.
Mm-hmm.
But at first it really is. Sam's doing really well. He's following directions. He's remembering details. And there's even a moment where he comes up with a really clever solution to get a plank of wood by using a rope.
Oh, wow. So he's actually like problem solving.
Yeah. And Doug is very surprised by this. He's like,
Yeah.
I did not expect the AI to figure that out.
That's really interesting because it shows that the AI is capable of learning and adapting.
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, it seems like things are going really smoothly. But of course, this wouldn't be the deep dive if there wasn't a twist.
Right, because where's the fun in that?
Exactly. So as the game goes on, we start to notice something a little strange happening with Sam.
Oh?
Yeah, and it starts very subtly, like little things that he's saying are kind of off.
Like what?
Like he starts using the phrase, holy bucket,
A holy bucket.
which is not a common phrase.
No, not really.
And then it kind of escalates from there. He starts throwing in some nautical terms, some British slang, and even just like completely made up words.
That's so weird.
Yeah, and it gets to the point where he starts talking about summoning this high demon Elgrim.
A high demon Elgrim.
Yeah, who has absolutely nothing to do with the game.
So it's like he's pulling from all these different sources and just kind of like mixing them all together.
Yeah, and it's super bizarre to watch because it's like he's trying to sound sophisticated, but it just comes across as completely nonsensical.
But I imagine it's also pretty entertaining.
Oh, yeah. It's hilarious to watch because Doug is obviously very confused and kind of amused by this whole thing.
So this is where the event horizon comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what Doug calls the event horizon because it's this point where Sam's language becomes so incoherent that it's just like staring into a black hole of AI weirdness.
Wow, so it's like he's crossed this threshold and there's no coming back.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever this happens, Doug has to reset the AI, which essentially creates a new Sam.
So it's like starting over with a fresh slate, but
Mhm.
I'm guessing the weirdness doesn't just go away.
No, it definitely doesn't.
So every time he resets, it's like a new version of Sam, but with a new layer of weirdness.
Exactly. And he goes through a lot of Sam. There's even a running Sam counter in the video to keep track.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's kind of darkly comedic, like, oh no, not another Sam down the drain.
So we've got the good, the early successes, and we've got the strange, the event horizon.
Right. But what about the actual gameplay? How does Sam actually approach the challenges in Pajama Sam?
I'm curious to hear about that because the game does have some puzzles that require a bit of creative thinking.
Exactly. And so one example of a puzzle that Sam really struggles with is the counterweight basket puzzle.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
So in this puzzle, you have to add weight to one side of this basket to make it go up. And for whatever reason, Sam just cannot figure it out.
What does he do instead?
He tries all sorts of things like throwing rocks into the basket, climbing out of it, and then at one point he even starts rambling about the Dark Lord Elgrim again,
Oh, no.
and
Yeah.
even summoning Mike Pence.
Mike Pence.
Yeah, it's just complete chaos.
So it's like he's overthinking it to the point of absurdity.
Exactly, and Doug is just like losing it the whole time, which of course makes it even funnier.
But it does raise an interesting point about how AI approaches problem solving.
Yeah, because it seems like it struggles with this kind of common sense reasoning that humans take for granted.
Exactly. It's like it gets so bogged down in the literal instructions that it misses the bigger picture.
Yeah. And then there's another scene where he encounters this rusty minecart named Mud.
Oh, yeah, mud.
And instead of figuring out how to get the minecart moving, he goes off on this tangent about a mythical golden blade.
A golden blade. What does that have to do with anything?
Absolutely nothing.
So it seems like he has a tendency to get distracted by irrelevant details.
Yeah, and that seems to be a common issue with AI. It's processing all this information, but it doesn't always know what's important and what's just noise.
So it's not all sunshine and roses with AI.
Definitely not, but it's not all failures and weird tangents either.
Oh, good, because I was starting to get a little worried.
There are moments where Sam actually does really well, like he figures out the stone door gold puzzle, he eventually uses oil on the minecart to get it moving, and he even remembers the water meter reading from an earlier part of the game.
Okay, so he does have some redeeming qualities.
Yeah, exactly. And those moments are just as important as the failures because they show that AI can learn and adapt.
Yeah, it's not a static system. It's constantly evolving and improving based on the information it receives.
Right. So it's a reminder that even with all its quirks and limitations, AI is still a powerful tool.
And who knows, maybe someday it will be able to solve those counterweight puzzles without summoning any politicians.
I hope so.
So we've talked about the good, the strange, and some specific examples of the gameplay, but what about Sam himself? Does he stay this way throughout the entire video?
He does not. He goes through a lot of changes, and we're going to be talking all about that in the rest of this deep dive. So make sure you stick around for part 2, where we're going to be talking all about that.
Yeah, because I'm really curious to see how this all unfolds.
And trust me, you don't want to miss it.
I'm sure I don't.
We'll be right back. All right, so we've seen AI's journey through Pajama Sam. It's been a roller coaster of success and failure and weirdness.
Yeah, a lot of weirdness.
But what can we actually learn from all this?
Well, one of the big takeaways for me is that even though AI is super advanced, it still doesn't think like a human.
Right, like how it struggled with the counterweight basket. It seems so obvious to us.
Exactly, and I think it shows that AI lacks that intuitive understanding of the world that even little kids have.
Yeah, it's like it can process tons of data and solve complex equations, but it doesn't have that same common sense that we do.
And that's a big challenge for AI research because how do you teach a machine common sense?
It's like you can't just program it in, it has to learn it somehow.
Right, and we're still figuring out how to do that effectively.
So even though AI can be really powerful, it's not a magic solution.
Exactly, it still has limitations, and we need to be aware of those limitations if we're going to use it responsibly.
And I think this whole experiment highlights how important it is to keep developing and improving AI.
Yeah, we need to keep pushing the boundaries, but we also need to be careful.
Because like we saw with Sam, things can go off the rails pretty quickly.
And those event horizons weren't just funny glitches, they were kind of unsettling.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there's something inherently unpredictable about AI.
And that's something that researchers are really grappling with. How to make sure that AI stays safe and reliable even as it gets more complex.
Because if it starts generating nonsensical or misleading information in the real world, that could have serious consequences.
Imagine an AI giving medical advice based on those weird phrases Sam was using.
That's a terrifying thought.
So we need to make sure that AI is giving us accurate and trustworthy information.
And I think that goes back to the idea of AI as a tool.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool, but it's still a tool, and it's up to us to use it wisely.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? I mean, we also saw Sam do some pretty impressive things.
Oh, absolutely. And we shouldn't forget about those successes because they show us the incredible potential of AI.
Like, imagine AI helping doctors diagnose diseases earlier, or helping teachers personalize education for every student.
Those are just a few examples of how AI could make a real difference in the world.
And I think it's important to remember that AI is ultimately a product of human ingenuity.
It's a reflection of our creativity and our desire to solve problems.
But even with all this potential, there's always that question lurking in the back of our minds.
You mean the whole robots taking over the world thing?
Yeah, is that something we should actually be worried about?
I think it's a valid concern, but we need to approach it with a balanced perspective.
So it's not about being afraid of AI, it's about understanding it and using it responsibly.
Exactly. And that starts with education and open discussion.
We need to talk about the ethical implications of AI and involve diverse perspectives in its development.
Because AI is not just a technological issue, it's a social issue, a cultural issue. It affects all of us.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here about AI's limitations, its potential, its risks, and the importance of ethical development.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on something we haven't really discussed yet. The role of humor in all of this.
Oh, yeah. Doug's video was hilarious.
It was, and I think humor actually plays an important role in how we understand and relate to AI.
I agree, because it allows us to approach this complex and potentially intimidating topic with a sense of playfulness.
Yeah, when you can laugh at something, it takes away some of the fear and mystery.
And I think that's crucial when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to see it as some kind of all-powerful force that's separate from us.
It's about remembering that AI is a tool that we created and we control.
And sometimes it's okay to laugh at its mistakes along the way.
Exactly. So keep that sense of humor as we continue to explore the fascinating world of AI.
So we've talked about AI's limitations and its potential. We've talked about the importance of ethical development, and we've even talked about the role of humor.
But now I think it's time to address the big question, can AI beat a kid's game? Okay, so we've talked a lot about how AI learns from data, how it sometimes struggles with common sense, and the challenges of making sure it stays safe and reliable.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We've also talked about the incredible things AI could potentially do and how important it is to think about the ethical side of things as AI gets more powerful.
Right, because it's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we use it and what kind of impact it has on society.
But watching Doug's video really made me think about something else too.
Oh, what's that?
It's how AI interacts with a world that's specifically designed for kids.
Yeah, Pajama Sam is a game all about imagination and simple logic and facing your fears.
You wouldn't think it would be that hard for a sophisticated AI to grasp.
Right, you'd think it would be a piece of cake.
But Sam's struggles really show how differently AI and humans think.
Like, AI can process information and solve equations, but it doesn't have that same intuitive understanding of the world that even young children have.
It's like AI misses those little details, those unspoken rules that we pick up on as humans.
And think about how kids learn. They're constantly exploring and experimenting and using their imaginations to make sense of things.
They don't need step-by-step instructions for everything. They can figure things out through trial and error and by watching how other people do things.
And that kind of learning is still super difficult for AI to replicate.
Which makes me wonder, could AI ever really understand the nuances of human emotion and experience?
That's a big question. Could it learn to empathize, to be creative, to have a sense of humor that's not just based on patterns and data?
Those are some pretty deep philosophical questions.
Yeah, and I don't think we have all the answers yet, but that's what makes exploring AI so interesting.
It's not just about building smarter machines, it's about trying to understand what it means to be intelligent, to be human.
And maybe as AI continues to develop, we'll learn more about ourselves along the way.
So to bring it back to our original question, can AI beat a kid's game?
Well, in Doug's video, Sam eventually did beat Pajama Sam, but it took a lot of tries, a lot of weird detours, and a lot of help from Doug.
Which tells us that even though AI is amazing, it's still got a ways to go before it can truly match human intelligence.
But even with its limitations, AI gives us a glimpse of what technology might be capable of in the future.
And it forces us to confront some really important questions about the role we want AI to play in our lives.
It's been a fascinating deep dive full of surprises, insights, and lots of laughs.
And I hope it sparked your curiosity about the world of AI and the big questions it raises.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep an open mind as we journey into the future of intelligence.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.